Okay, we're back with a mic and a camera. See how that works? Just took a little bit of finding and finicking the settings. We're still learning here. YouTube has been pretty helpful. And welcome back to the Gamer Librarian podcast. I am your host, Adrian, and we are on episode 9 this week, which is insane. 109. I mean, we've been going at it for almost 2.5 years, which is pretty insane. A long time. The new apartment change is going to be good. A lot of stuff to talk about. We're in a time where there isn't a whole lot of games that I'm specifically dying to play. And I'll be honest, because of Halloween coming around, I wanted to play Silent Hill F. But, you know, the horror game genre is one that I think is in an impasse where the pinnacle gameplay for it, I'm going to say it, is Dead Space. And, Resident Evil's up there. Silent Hill for the last few years just hasn't really hit in the same way. So I've been kind of sleeping on that, right? Silent Hill 2 was just kind of, a much more polished version of the original game, which is good. But I don't really know if I'm going to be super into the newest Silent Hill, but I am down to play it at some point. Maybe if it comes onto Game Pass or it's part of some PlayStation Plus or something, you know. Halloween is definitely a fun time for me. And we tried to keep up with that theme of horror spookiness where we did Chronos the New Dawn, very much like a Dead Space style game. And to me, that game didn't necessarily hit on the same vibes that a Dead Space game should. And that's just a big bar for me. Right, we had the one made by the same original developers. Um, what was it called? The prison one. That one was pretty mid. And yeah, those games have been the spooky games. And since something like Silk Song, something that was like 170 hours of gameplay, just straight through, we're kind of on a back foot here with games. So we're not really focused on playing anything in particular, except for something that I thought would be really interesting to try out, and that was The Outer Worlds 2. And to me, The Outer Worlds 2 is just slog for the Game Pass subscription, and there's some improvements to the first game, which is, awesome, super stellar. But when I think of these spacefaring games and content that's already in it, I'm gonna say it's something like Starfield. I mean, it's pretty funny that Microsoft buys these companies like Bethesda, Obsidian, and they're making these same style games that they've been making for years, and they're pretty much the same, right? I don't think Outer Worlds 1 was entirely made for the Xbox experience. I don't think it was made under their umbrella at that time. But now that it is, and after something like Starfield, after the great remaster that is Oblivion, and then up into, just things like Skyrim and Fallout 4, those kind of games that held Bethesda and, to a degree Obsidian, right, if we count in New Vegas, to that pedigree. And it felt like each one was a big advancement on the next. I don't think it's here. And I say that in the way that, like, these companies, they're basically the same. They've worked on the same types of games together. They make the same style games, and now they're under the same umbrella. There's no real reason for some of them to have really great features and looking graphics compared to others, and why they sometimes they don't. The Outer Worlds 2 is definitely a fun sandbox game in this world that's just more of the same. It's the Outer Worlds 1, but more. And that's not a bad thing, but this game definitely isn't the same type of feel that a Fallout game is, or what the Oblivion, Skyrim type games are. These games don't really feel like they have that. And the crafted worlds just feel like the same again. And a lot of the enemies and the overall like combat. I mean, there's a lot of improvement on the UI and just the interface and how the game runs, which is really good. But we see things in these Bethesda games that are just, thrown away and stuff. I mean, the crafting is bare bones. There's no like building in Outer Worlds, but there's building in something like Starfield. To me, it's just like that's the same thing. I was really hoping that money and, pedigree or whatever from Microsoft would really help elevate the brands that they're buying these games, but they're really not. They're just churning out more of the same slop that they think worked in the past, but in reality, at the time, for something I'm going to say it like Bethesda games, the early Fallout 3, New Vegas, like Oblivion or Morrowind, right? Those games were heralded as like the best of their time. And same thing for something like Halo. Halo is something that every time that it's come out in its first like three iterations had more and more each time to elevate gaming. That made gaming feel like it was growing and expanding and becoming larger, more features, more, events, more things to do. Just overall, I think that after a lot of these Microsoft games, we see that they're not trying to put out innovative games. They're trying to put out games that they already have an idea of success for, know they're going to work, and just want to redo it again. We see that with the Master Chief collection not being put on Sony platforms, but instead they're remaking the first Combat Evolved game into Campaign Evolved. That bugs me so much. And we already saw something like that with Gears Reloaded, right? And I already hated that because there's already a remake. I don't know why we're not porting these older games and just making them accessible on current hardware. I mean, the Master Chief Collection is on PC and I can play it because I'm already subscribed to Game Pass to try out their newest game, Outer Worlds 2, for half of the launch price. So basically, I could just play Halo or any of the other Gears of War multiplayer games. I don't know what we're doing. Why isn't there a Phoenix collection when there is a Master Chief collection? I mean, Game Pass lets you play all of these games just right there. Why are we remaking them? Why are we remaking them? I I don't think Gears of War E-Day is going to be that type of innovation. I mean, we already have the Gears 1 remake, and that seems really great, right? It has great graphics. It'll probably help, you know, at least fund some of Gears of War E-Day more than whatever was already put in, because that game was announced before that remake or whatever. I'm bitter. I'm bitter over Microsoft and how they're handling these franchises. It's pretty bad. And as a consumer, we can access them. That's the best thing. But they're not going to be making innovative games. They're they're not, because nobody after Halo Infinite, nobody wanted a new Halo game. I mean, absolutely not, especially not a remake. Certainly, certainly, certainly not a remake. I mean, like that was your time to just make like another Spartan Assault or a new Halo Wars, something smaller scale, and just be like, yo, Halo still exists. Haha. Halo Infinite wasn't what it should have been. But when I think of games coming out like The Elder Scrolls 6, I mean, when I think of The Elder Scrolls 6, I think of like GTA 6. I think of like what innovative, what cool additions, how is gameplay, how is the experience of playing these long time 20-year franchises going to be elevated. Outer Worlds 2 isn't a 20-year, franchise, but it's built off of a legacy of style of games that does have that experience from the same type of people, same companies, relatively. And that's the same thing with like BioWare, right? BioWare is that same feel where Veilguard was not an RPG elevation of the experience we had in the first three games. And you know what? They're all typically the same. The first two Dragon Ages, they're pretty much the same. Inquisition has a much more stylistic, different feel, which is awesome. I think it's great. And then Mass Effect, the trilogy, that's the same thing. That's the same paradigm. And we're never going to see games that elevate that experience ever again, except for like Baldur's Gate. I think Baldur's Gate nailed it. Baldur's Gate is at least Baldur's Gate 3 is the Bioware game that like we all wanted. And we're not getting that with things like The Outer Worlds 2 or Campaign Evolved. It's things like that just really, really irk me. So on the consumer side, Game Pass is really good for anybody who doesn't already have a massive 360 gaming collection or wasn't around at least on the PS3 side where you couldn't play Halo or anything like that. It's insane. We talked a little about them. EA, we've been playing Battlefield 6, which has been insane. We've been doing a little bit of the single player campaign. It's not anything to write home about. It's been relatively mid. This is the kind of scenario what I would like if they're not going to make their multiplayer free to play or have a free to play option like Battlefield 6 has RedSec, which I haven't played at all, but Battle Royales is very, very common nowadays. I think that if you're going to have versions of a game, just have options where you can pay for just the single player or just the multiplayer. Like that's all I'm saying. Because I would have been far more down to pay for a cheaper version of the Battlefield multiplayer without the single player. Because I don't care about it. It's not like it's anything enjoyable. It's not even like co-op. If there was co-op, I think the single player experience is not necessary, but it's definitely at a much more higher value, which Halo Infinite did not have at launch, which is insane. Yeah, the single player is nothing to write home about, but the multiplayer is phenomenal. I mean, it feels like Battlefield. I haven't seen all the maps. I haven't played all the game modes and all the maps there, but just when I've been playing for the last day or so, it's been pretty fun. Wanted to play some multiplayer shooter type games while we've, been getting the apartment decorated, chilling. But there's no real long term single player games that I'm like dying to play. Like Outer Worlds is just kind of, you know what, I'm gonna pick this up every now and again, try to get through, but it's just not the same style. I mean that intro is just so forced and out there. I don't know. These This game is not the same as like Fallout or New Vegas. It doesn't have that kind of feel. It doesn't feel gritty. It doesn't feel like it feels too goofy, especially like the overall writing and the jokes and all that kind of stuff. There's definitely a different degree here in these modern games than there was back then. And that worries me for something like Elder Scrolls, where we're just gonna have like a more bland version of something that we've already loved. Like, for example, how gritty and dark, brooding Dragon Age used to be, and then Veilguard. Like that's what I think the Elder Scrolls from Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim is going to be compared to six. It is not going to be the same. They will not do it. So I don't think Microsoft games are going to have the type of quality that we've expected for all these years. Like, it's a shame. And I hope that other companies that can do it can do it. Battlefield 6 is just another shooter game, right? It doesn't feel like it's that military, multiplayer, large scale extravaganza. It just feels like, here's another battlefield, but we did everything right. We've gotten everything done, what we thought was necessary. Yeah, games aren't the same anymore. And it's definitely noticeable from the top level, from the big AAA teams. However, just because I didn't play Battlefield Red Sec doesn't mean I'm not adverse to battle royales. Now, I haven't gotten a chance to fully play it, but I did download the Simpsons Fortnite update, and I haven't played Fortnite in literally like 6 years or so. Whenever it first came out, like I played the first version of Fortnite, and that was it. I skipped the Aliens expansion or crossover, the Dragon Ball Z crossover. The Simpsons map looks cool. The Simpsons map looks cool. I wanna shoot some people in the Simpsons map. That seems really fun. So maybe next episode we'll be talking more about that. Yeah, we talk about the horrors of Game Pass. This is probably the last spooky themed episode. So that's almost what I had to say about Game Pass, right? I still think it's a absurdity, a tragedy that World of Warcraft still is not on Game Pass. I think that's a crime. It's a crime. I mean, just for the fact of like, if you're a user who's been subscribing to well, to be honest, Game Pass and World of Warcraft for years, because Game Pass is relatively new, right? Maybe 6 years, 6+ years. World of Warcraft's been out for a long time. It's had a subscription model for a long time. Not every game needs to have a forced upon subscription model. I mean, you want to get new people to play your game. Look, it may have worked in the year like 2006, 2005, whenever it came out. But now, if you don't have a way to at least get people in the door, you're not going to get people on board. And I think it's a shame to make people pay for both at the same time, Game Pass and World of Warcraft. Because if you just want to play World of Warcraft, go for it. I mean, that's more to you. But maybe the individual subscription gets you the expansions, but a Game Pass subscription should at least get you access to play like the base game or classic or whatever versions are out there. Yeah, I don't. If there's no port of World of Warcraft, some port at some time on Game Pass, I think they're cooked. I think they're really, really cooked because I know I will never go back to World of Warcraft as long as it's not on Game Pass. Like I know I just won't. And I think a lot of other games should take that into account. I mean, you know, Square Enix already, I'm pretty sure, put some of their games on Game Pass. Final Fantasy 14 could be really cool. I know Elder Scrolls is on there. That's dope. Why is World of Warcraft not? I know Elder Scrolls on there. Elder Scrolls is free to play. You don't need a subscription from the start. I think it's gross. I think it's gross, and that's the horrors of Game Pass. That's really what Game Pass is just really not good. Like nowadays, I have a Game Pass. I have an Xbox 360 library starting from like 2006. Dead Rising, Gears of War, Left 4 Dead, Fable 1 and 2. Those were my first Xbox games, and I've been building my entire library on Xbox. I've like all their exclusives, got them physical, right? That was the time. But now they're all they're all digital. They're all digital games. I can just, if I subscribe to Game Pass for any of the newer games, I have access to every one of those games digitally. And I do physically now, which is insane. So the value for me is only in their newer games, literally only into the newer games and whatever third party slock they get, like the BioWare or the EA subscription stuff or the Ubisoft stuff. Like that's it, right? But I already have most of those games on 360. And I could probably say the same for a lot of people who have Steam or Origin accounts or whatever the hell. Yeah, that's it. It's the horrors of Game Pass is really that. I think that if you're a new gamer, a gamer born like after the year 2020, 2015, and you don't have a lot of games or a lot of money for games, Game Pass is the shit because you can play all of the Halo games, all of the Gears of War games. I'm pretty sure the Fable games, and certainly all of the Ubisoft EA nonsense that comes out. Right, I think that's the best value that it has is right there, and it probably makes money off of those newer, newer gamers for the most part, right? Because if I was, a young kid, I would be like, well, I haven't been around to play these older games. I'll just subscribe to it and I'll just blast through, at the very least, some of the single player games, some of the multiplayer games that come with single player games. And if a new title comes out and I'm interested in it, I'll play it, or I could just cancel, wait, you know, I have all the consoles. I don't necessarily need to pick and choose where I get my stuff. If I'm gonna try and get on the Switch too. But man, Game Pass is insane for the type of quality it offers, considering that there's not a whole lot there for the overall experience. But if you're somebody who's either a longtime fan of gaming and you want to try out every new game, at least on the Xbox side, or you've never played them before, never played any of these games, you're just born. It's That's probably the best thing about it. Yeah, I flip flop on Game Pass all the time, whether or not it's super valuable to everyone. But I definitely think that there's something in there for everybody. It just depends on what you're looking for. Because I only subscribe to it if there's a new game I haven't played. That's typically a new title, and we'll probably finish the Outer World and then completely cancel. But it definitely is fun being able to go back and just quickly play something like Halo 2, Halo 3, or Gears 4, Gears Tactics. Yeah, I think that's fun. And, we can move on to the manga update. This has been something that we try to keep standing on, and that's the constant updates that manga has. I mean, it's hard to say when all of them come out because things like Chainsaw Man, Boruto, and Dandadan, they're pretty regular. They come out regularly almost. But then like One Piece, I feel like it skips a week or two every so often. But then we get to the extreme chapter releases, which is like Black Clover. Black Clover just came out with 3 chapters, 384 and 386. We're in the final stretches for Black Clover. I mean, the Black Clover manga has been something that I think has been pretty beloved by a lot of people, but it's not getting the kind of love that it deserves because it's not getting a super brand new anime adaptation, I don't think. And, we're just winding down for the final battle, right? We all know where these mangas go. They're relatively always the same type of story beat, which I think is pretty cool. But being able to see like returning characters come and do cool shit right at the end is super, super sick. That's really what the last 10 chapters was, of course, these two are going to win in the end. And then we're going to have the returning characters just come and mop up, help out, assist. We'll probably get some chapters that make it seem very lore heavy that kind of wrap it all up. Very unsure about that because, this is one of the mangas that's been going on for, off and on for a very long time, kind of like Hunter x Hunter. So it's kind of hard to say how much they're really going to keep filling in. But something like Berserk, we could say the same thing. There is definitely no signs of it really stopping with Berserk, but with the latest chapter, it feels like we're going to be turning off into the new arc, and then it's going to be straightforward, all action, hopefully, or something. I mean, there's a lot to go through with that manga. And we caught up with Chainsaw Man 215 to 218. We did not get a chance to see the movie, which was a shame, but we'll binge all of Chainsaw Man at some point. But the manga has been, you know, kind of beloved here by me off and on. It's been one that's like, I'm here for the action, but I'm not necessarily here for the plot. The plot is not something that I'm super cohesive, like that's I'm super invested into. Denji is a decent character, but he's definitely somebody who doesn't even know what he wants now after being like manipulated by so much by some of these characters. So I liked it better when he was just trying to be like a real hero instead of trying to just do things for other people. That's just really how I feel about Denji. But everything else about Chainsaw Man is pretty sick. Boruto. Boruto has been something that I didn't think I'd be coming back to this much because I am invested in Boruto's story at where the point he is now. There's things early on where like it's definitely hard to get into. But with Boruto the Blue Vortex, this newest iteration of the Boruto manga, it isn't so bad. It's definitely more straightforward than Boruto should be. I feel like we should be expanding a little bit more on the world. And that's the part of the worst thing about it is how limited it is in its scope for Boruto is. I mean, yeah, you know what? Alien, machine, god, demon things, whatever. I don't really care about the villains and their origins in this magical world of ninjas. But what I do care about is like the expansion of the world and how these time skips and the evolution of technology and then obviously the jutsu and shit like that evolves. That's the best thing I could say about Boruto and the Blue Vortex is seeing little things like that be introduced into the world, not so much the overarching plot. Because I think the overarching plot is it's too focused on the Boruto Naruto family, at least from what it seems, and then it kind of treads old ground too much. That's really all I can say. Dan to Dan 198. Now we didn't get to 200 yet. There's maybe like 15 or so chapters after 200. We'll probably be on that next episode. But ooh, that shark tornado is cool. That shark monsoon or whatever. Really, really sick. And we'll definitely be watching season 2 at some point. I know Hannah really wants to do that. We have JoJo Land's chapter 30 coming out November 18th. This is one of the mangas that come out like once a month. Whoo, whoo, that's I don't know, man. It feels like these mangas will never ever end with release schedules like this, man. Wild Strawberry is something that I completely forgot about. We have about 8 chapters to read, so that's something that we've been thoroughly enjoying. I know that the writer was sick, so we kind of, been off of it. I didn't know it came back, but I am super excited for Wild Strawberry. That's definitely coming back. Probably a cover of that on the next thumbnail because I want to see more of that. I want to see a Wild Strawberry anime. And the last manga we talk about, One Piece, 1163. I believe Davy Jones was being mind controlled. It's not really much of a spoiler, right? If you're here, you're here. And he might die. This might be the death of Davy Jones. Probably see him die here, which will be insane. I'm so intrigued for where One Piece is going to go. But I mean, a weekly release schedule, that's the best we can hope for, right? And they try to keep up with that. The anime gets little pauses everywhere, but I think that they're going to try and match pace with the manga and the anime at some point. Release both last chapters, last episode at the same time or something like that. But yeah, dude, I'd be watching all these manga and stuff, trying my best to keep up with them. And we got a few things to talk about. So before we get to something to end on the Halloween stuff, we binged all of Mayor of Kingstown. We're on episode 2 of season 4, the latest one. Ooh, ooh, what a great show. I mean, this is the type of show that, definitely kept us coming back. There's certain characters that made it feel like they were just retelling the same type of story, and there wasn't much of like an expansion so much from season like 1 to 3. But now now the show is getting good. So I don't want to say too much spoilers on that, but Mayor of Kingstown was a surprising delight to watch. So gonna keep up on that as it releases throughout the week or the weeks, right? It's a weekly show. And now we can talk about the horror stuff. So let's just talk about one show that we've been mentioning for a while. And now that we've watched it, we can definitely say that we're going to be returning every week for it because I like it. I think it's cool. And that is It, Welcome to Derry. It, Welcome to Derry. This is the type of show that doesn't need to exist, but it exists for the right reasons. It exists for like the expansion of the world and just making more of the same rather than I think like rewriting or making things, different or changing or just being a straight up adaptation. It Welcome to Dairy like at least takes the premise of it and evolves it into like a prequel, right? This is kind of like a prequel. And of course the original source material is different for this world because this world seems to be taking place in the more modern telling of it, which is the like 1980s to the 2000s, the more recent ones. Not the same one to one in any regard. That's not a bad thing, and I think that's actually a really good thing because this is just more of the same in a respectable, true telling of a beloved classic. I think it's great. I mean, we're seeing scenes that we've never seen for some horror movies. I mean, that first episode, I say this for things like Game of Thrones. If the first episode doesn't grab you, you're not going to like the show. That's literally all I can say. So if the first episode of It, Welcome to Derry, does not grab you, don't even bother. Now, the next thing let's talk about for our Halloween special, the last Halloween for the year, VHS Halloween. How much could I glaze a found footage film? I'll always do it. VHS Halloween was such a surprising delight delight to watch. I mean, not everything about it is perfect. I think the inner rim things about it, the inner rim specials, they're like the cola taste testing, whatever. Those were no, nah. But there are some of the other shorts in that found footage anthology. Solid, solid entertainment. Real goofy sometimes, really enjoyable, real believable to a degree. Yeah, I enjoyed them a lot. That was definitely a surprise. So, you know, that's all we got to say about Halloween. And, until the end of the year, who knows? Because that's when Game Awards comes out. That's when we get a whole new slate of games to look forward to. I'm so excited. And oh, we never even did a lot of the news stuff. So there's a Avatar Fighting Legends, the playtest. It's a closed alpha, which seems pretty cool. I saw some gameplay on one of their trailers that seemed pretty dope. Don't know if we're going to try and get into the playtest. And then there is New World going into full maintenance mode as Amazon cuts 14,000 jobs. And apparently, the Lord of the Rings MMO is completely canceled. That's crazy. I mean, I'm a big MMO guy. I think MMOs are like the wave, but people don't have that kind of time or that kind of patience in terms of gaming anymore. That's definitely not the vibe. So, to me, I would have loved it, but that's definitely sad to see that 14,000 jobs got cut. And we saw that the Halo devs are mad over Halo being used to promote ICE, which is insane. That ICE is doing that, the government, insane. There's a game called Project Tal, which seemed pretty cool, had like an announcement trailer. And then, that's relatively it. Chronos had a Halloween update for a whole bunch of skins, Halloween skins. And then there is a Marvel Cosmic Invasion behind the scenes video, which is pretty cool. And Animal Crossing is getting an update on the Switch. I mean, Animal Crossing is a old game that I think is too reliant on its archaic methods to really warrant being a priced game like that. That's just me, right? Pretty online features, whatever. But I think that in terms of how similar it is to its older iterations, it's definitely not worth it. But that's literally all I gotta say. Is all the typical news and stuff. This has been the Game Librarian Podcast. Peace.